anything you guys want to discuss, players to go over, injuries, trades. There was a lot to unpack. So we're going to go off the Yahoo Fantasy Week 9 waiver wire list, and then we'll jump into a little bit of stock up and down. Quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford, he had a fantastic game, and Puka Nakua and Cooper Kupp are both back. And the way they look, they're probably not going to sell either of those. So that means you should look to add Stafford if you are in bye week or just not having a quarterback perform. Looking at you, CJ Stroud. Next, moving on. I forget this gives a little bit of fab advice. At this time of the year, I don't like sitting on fab for too long. So $7, I'd say you can even go a little bit higher, maybe around 10 or 12. Jameis Winston, he had a fantastic game, but do not forget that they traded Cooper Kupp. They have a lot of decent pieces there, but I'm just not loving it. Their O-line is depleted compared to what it used to be because they do not have picks. So Jameis Winston, he has shown in the past he can throw the ball quite a bit, but he's also someone that can bite you. So I would probably only add him if I had it to or matchup dependent. Let's see here. They got the fab at $4. I don't disagree with that if you just need a quarterback and throw a little fab. Additional options, Bo Nix. I think we were all wrong with our opinions on Bo Nix. He started off terrible, but Sean Payne knows what he is doing, and he is looking very, very good. Joe Flacco, they made the news to go from Richardson to Flacco. I don't love Flacco as a start. I'd rather have one of the two above, but we'll get into it in a little bit. He makes a bunch of other players way more fantasy relevant. But in a pinch, again, I can definitely see starting Flacco and depending on who the matchup's against. Running backs, Braylon Allen. I mean, coming from a Packers fan and looking at Aaron Rodgers and that team, it is a mess. It is a mess. We all took Breece Hall in the top of the first round thinking he was going to be a stud. And now here we are looking at Braylon Allen. I do think that he gets enough of a workload that I have no problems with you starting him in a flex, especially if you have an injury or bye week issues. Moving on, Tyler Algier. Unlike Allen, Algiers really is game script, and it looks like they're getting more and more. They're finally learning how to use Bijan. So Algier, I probably wouldn't be starting. I'd rather have someone like Allen. Again, don't disagree with kind of what they're saying about the fab. Moving on, other various guys. Isaac Guerrero, I'm going to tell everyone he looked great, but please use caution. A few things. First of all, if you did not know, they are going to be on a bye, the 49ers, and all signs are pointing to Christian McCaffrey coming back the week after the bye. So with that, Mason, Guerrero, McCaffrey, I think it's one of those where you start McCaffrey and the other two, you just wait and see. I do think that they like him. Obviously, they drafted him. They also really like the power back of Mason. So again, I'm not going to blow too much fab. And with the buy, I'm really not liking it. Bust. All right, Bo Dragon. I don't know what you're asking, and if it's the way I'm reading it, not even going to read that out loud. McLaughlin, he definitely is a guy that's got all the flash there in Denver, but I think his usage will just always stay small. Williams has shown this year that he can be someone that carries the ball 60-70% of the time. On to Jaylen Warren. He's someone that I like. He showed last year that he can definitely be a good complementary back, but right now they're riding Harris, and I don't see them giving enough volume to Warren. On to the wide receivers and tight ends. Again, just run through this list from from Yahoo. If you have questions, people want to talk about adding, dropping, putting in there, and then we're going to go team by team, players we're up and down on. So, Cedric Tillman looked fantastic, but do not forget Jerry Jeudy is someone who has a high pedigree, and he has flashed time and time again. So those are two that I'm looking at, but definitely I think Tillman is the number one because he was sitting there as that third, fourth, fifth option. So he's getting all those practice reps with Jameis. So I think that's what's going to help Tillman is those reps that he had before Jameis took over. So again, that's what I would do. I would probably throw, let's see what Yahoo says. And then I'll say, wow, they're going with 36% of their fab. Um, Probably not going to go 36. I was going to recommend more like 2022. But yeah, if you think this is a guy and your gut's telling you, sure. Now, Josh Downs is the guy. He had a decent connection with even Richardson, but the good news for everyone in fantasy is they benched Richardson if you did not know that. So Josh Downs moves way up. Pittman should be moving back up. If you're in a league that with someone that doesn't pay too much attention, I would look to try to trade. And Dynasty, the arrows pointing up like they kind of have all season for these young guys when Flacco's been there. Kind of curious. Okay, so for Josh Downs, they only have $26, but for Cedric, they have empty the. I'm going to reverse it honestly. But again, that's kind of your personal opinion. But I would rather have Josh Downs. Keenan Coleman, this is really interesting. Josh Allen's shown he will spread the ball around. Coleman has been someone who's got the ball. Last week, Cooper didn't do too well, but his first week back, and his first week being traded showed that he definitely has a decent little connection right off the bat. And then finally, Khalil Shakir, he's getting the ball. As long as it's this robust offense, I can see having bits and pieces of it. I would not be happy with anyone being my wide receiver 1 or 2, but if it's your wide receiver 3 or someone that's a flex, definitely can see adding Coleman if he is out there. Yahoo has you dropping $11. I don't hate that. I can see going a little bit more, but again, bye weeks, injuries, do not hate Coleman. They invested a high draft pick for a reason. Taysom Hill, I said this last week. I can't, in good conscience, ever recommend going for Taysom Hill. He's just so Mr. Jekyll and Hyde. You never know how they're going to use him. So I'm going to skip over that. Yahoo, I disagree. Ricky Pearsall, he had a decent game back. Remember, he didn't have a training camp. He's trying to get back into form. But again, he's also someone that the 49ers use a first-round draft pick. So I do not have any problems picking him up going forward, especially with him being the number 3 wide receiver in the Debo, Jennings, and Pearsall set. Elijah Moore, he got 12 targets. Same thing I kind of said with Tillman up there is Elijah Moore being that 4th, 5th receiver, got those reps with Jameis, and that's who he has connections with and everything. So I don't mind, but I'm not really spending too much because Elijah Moore has proven he's fool's gold. All right, on to Jalen Coker. This is the Panthers, if you didn't know. A thing about the Panthers, in case you did not see, is they traded away Deontay Johnson. Huge news. He went to the Ravens. So you have Coker. You also have Leggett. I definitely think I would like Leggett 1 just because the pedigree, and he has shown that he can be the flashier player. But Coker definitely as a rookie, and even though he's undrafted, has shown that he definitely has a decent connection with Young. And at Young, maybe it's just because he's that big body target at 6'3" that he just needs to throw the ball up. But I'm staying away from the Panthers if you're asking. Michael Wilson, someone for Dynasty I love. Depending on the matchup with Arizona, I can definitely see starting him as a flex. So he's someone, if you have room on your bench, I recommend it. Juju, honestly, with Hopkins, Kelsey getting some volume, Juju, I think it's one of those where for the Chiefs, it's the sum of all the parts, but I'm probably not starting any of them. Let's see here. Hutchinson, I honestly think, and people were shocked that I was mentioning this, but with Diggs being out, I think the pecking order definitely is Nico when he comes back, and is same way with Diggs. Then Tank Dell obviously reverts to hopefully what we saw last year. But the person I'm looking at number 3 is Schultz. All right. If you have been needing a tight end, Schultz has shown that he can be that guy that gives you 7 points a week, especially as the 3rd option. So I would rather have Schultz as the 3rd option I'm looking for the Texans. Zach Ertz, he's a guy I tell people every single week when we do show on Sunday. If you're looking on the waiver wire and you need someone and you just want 5 points, unless you need a huge boom, Zach Ertz is your man. Finally, with Dallas Goedert sideline, they want to talk up Grant, but I think it's just one of those shows where it's Batman and Robin, AJ Brown, skinny Batman. Those are the only two I'd really be touching. Defenses, we have the Commanders. I mean, for the start of the season, but they are against the Giants, so I don't mind. But I'm never recommending burning a waiver wire or spending too much fab unless you have to on a defense. Cincinnati actually had the worst ranking last week. If you started them by some crazy, they were -4. I really don't like the Bengals defense. Not even going to talk kickers. Let's quickly get into this. It's got stock up and down after week 9. Going to give you a very, very quick rundown, guys. So stock up, they're saying Trey McBride. Definitely can see that. Marvin Harrison Jr. has found his way. I like Kyler, and same thing with Michael Wilson. Overall, Arizona, I think, is a pretty decent offense to have parts of. On to the Atlanta Falcons. Darnell Mooney. If you're like me and you're still not trusting him, which I made that mistake last week, which I was very upset at myself because I've been preaching to add Mooney. Well, put him in. For the most part, he should be locked and loaded. Definitely as your wide receiver 3, if not your wide receiver 2, and he has been fantastic. Also, Pitts got to make the apology. I have hated on him for the last few years, and he looks like he's actually getting a decent amount of volume, that his dropsies are going to be okay. So those are ones. I talked about Algier. I definitely agree with this, that his stock is down. Baltimore, stock is up. It did not have this on there, but I will bring it up again. Deontay Johnson got traded there. He is clearly the best wide receiver there. So it is Deontay Johnson. If you haven't been paying attention and you dropped Mark Andrews, he has turned it around the last few weeks. So Mark Andrews' arrow should also be pointing up. The steadies, got to disagree. Rashad Bateman. Him and Zay Flowers, after that trade, this article is written before, but they should definitely be in the stock down. And I would not start them unless I had to. I want to see how it works with Deontay Johnson. Moving on quickly to the Bills. James Cook clearly is the number 1, but if you're in a pinch and you need someone in your flex, Davis is not a bad option. He's shown he averages like 6 yards a carry, and as long as he gets a few passes, he can get you between 5 and 8 points when you're in a tough spot. So I would have him as someone to add. Khalil Shakir, we talked about it. Coleman, Cooper, Kincaid, all of them are being steady. Josh is doing a great job this year of spreading the ball around. It is a little frustrating, but it's shown that for the most part, he gives you 3 viable people you just might not know each week. This past week, it was Cooper, which was kind of sad because I know a lot of people were probably starting him. On to the Carolina Panthers. We got to mention this. Chuba has been great, but there is that running back they drafted in the 2nd round lurking. Okay, they will slowly start to work him in. He was the top rated running back. He might have even gone in the 1st round. So Chuba, I like him as long as he has it, but I would love it if he's traded somewhere like the Cowboys where he just has the whole backfield. Moving on quickly. Oh, and anyone else on the Panthers, I'm not touching unless I had to. Chuba going to be viable the rest of the season. You know, Jordan, you say that, but what happens, if Young and they just completely stack the box like they did the first 2 weeks and stuff like that? I like Chuba. He was a stud at Oklahoma State the first couple of years. He had to find his way, but he always did pretty well to end the season. And starting last year, he has run with that role. So I do not hate Chuba. I'm more scared of what it's like now that they got Deontay Johnson gone. They have that rookie running back they need to get wet. And overall, Bryce Young is who worries me the most. Again, thanks for the comments, questions, anything else. Moving on to the Bears. Swift, I would put as a study simply because of the fact that he has run out of gas the last few years. So that's someone that I am not loving too much. But again, you got to start him. Kev Williams, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, I would have these stock down. They have it as Cole Kmet, but Cole Kmet is clearly part of that offense. And it's one of those where I would rather start him than Keenan Coleman. Moving on quickly. Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, Mike Gesicki made an appearance. Definitely looks good. Someone I want to mention is he was hurt, but T. Higgins, when he has been out there, an interesting next gen stat is he actually has been the first read option, not Jamar Chase. So T. Higgins having a great year. So he's someone, if he is healthy, definitely start. Joe Burrow, the arrow's up. I think you start him. Chase Brown definitely has that role to himself. I think it's more their O line and stuff that holds him back. And Zach Moss at this point is only a flex, or if you're in injury or bye week hell. Moving on to the Cleveland Browns. Jameis Winston definitely makes them better, same as Joe Flacco last year, and that tells you all you need to know about Winston. Watch our full video that we dropped on TGO. We actually have a debate of whether or not the Browns should be tanking. But Cedric Tillman, arrow up, most definitely. Jerry Jeudy, he was that first round talent that's flashed over and over again. Elijah Moore, I talked about this early in the video. Jameis Winston, who was he practicing with when he was a backup? He was practicing with Elijah Moore and Tillman. So that's why it seems like he popped. And definitely David Njoku's arrow should be way up right now. On to the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know how you have an arrow up on anyone. I mean, CD is the best talent they have, so I'd put him as steady. Dak, arrows down. I mean, if a team clamped down on him in garbage time, you wouldn't want him. Jake Ferguson is steady, but I don't know what the game plan was last week. They're throwing the tight end bubble screens and stuff like that. He had like 7 receptions for like 23 yards because they kept throwing him like 1-2 yard. The Cowboys are a mess. The sooner they fire the coach, the better. On to the Denver Broncos. I think we all have to say we're sorry to Bo Nix. The guy has been fantastic. Cortland Sutton is their number one. He's someone that will drive you crazy, though, because Bo Nix does do a good job distributing the ball. It reminds me, if you're old enough, back whenever the Saints kind of had it where they had no clear number one, and they drove you nuts every year, every week that they didn't know who the number one. And it's kind of like that with Bo Nix. Javonte Williams, I think you can start him, especially depending on matchups. Sorry, I got to spit that out. If he has a bad matchup, he's shown he probably should be benched. Detroit Lions. Yes. Jahmyr Gibbs is the man, okay? I can't say enough. He is a plug and play. Sam Laporta has been showing a little bit more life. David Montgomery, obviously a little banged up, but the way the Lions use him, he's totally fantasy viable. Amon-Ra, you don't need to say anymore. Jared Goff. People are still hating on this guy. He should be almost a plug-and-play guy. We will definitely see after this week with the Packers, who have one of the best secondaries. Hopefully Jair and everyone plays so you can truly see if Jared Goff has become that guy you just plug and play. Moving on, Packers. Christian Watson with... I'm a Packers fan. I'm going to tell you the truth. The Packers right now, it is so frustrating starting one of their wide receivers. I think Reed's the only one you plug and play, but even he is susceptible to not having the best games. If I had to say, it goes Reed, close your eyes and have Dubs as the number 3. Obviously, Jordan Love is a plug and play guy as long as he's healthy. Josh Jacobs, he's shown that he is an all-pro again this year. But Christian Watson... Wicks, the others, it's just so crazy and you don't know when to start. So I would only start them if other people in the pecking order are hurt. Moving on, Texans. Joe Mixon, as long as he's healthy, he has shown that he is their workhorse. Tank Dell, stock way up. I'm glad someone is acknowledging Dalton Schultz. With that injury, Schultz becomes the third target, which is valuable. CJ Stroud, though, he's had a couple of stinkers, so he needs to get right, and hopefully he does. Nico should be back, which it's shown that Nico really helps CJ Stroud. On to Indianapolis Colts. If you guys did not know, Joe Flacco is starting. He's bringing that magic that he brought to the Browns last year, and they have benched Anthony Richardson. That is great for Michael Pittman and Josh Downs. People have even told me Josh Downs is out there on the waiver wire. If so, you need to add him. Jonathan Taylor, everyone. Anthony Richardson, I've said this, but he is A more athletic Tebow. I'm going to say it and say it and say it. That's what he is. He can throw the ball 100 yards, but he cannot pass. On to the Jacksonville Jaguars. We have Evan Ingram, definitely up. Brian Thomas, as long as he's healthy, he has shown to be a steal. And Parker Washington, that's the one I'd pump the brakes on a little bit because I would say it's Ingram, Brian Thomas, and then going with Tank Bigsby. On Trevor Lawrence, if you did not know, the last 5 weeks, he's actually been very fantasy startable. Okay. So keep that in mind. Please do not hang on to stuff you saw in the beginning of the year. You got to be able to pivot to win in fantasy football. Moving on, Kansas City Chiefs. I talked about it. It says the stock is up on Travis Kelce. I honestly think, let's see here, full PPR. Pick one of the two wide receiver, one flex. We have Shakir, Dubs, McMillan, ETN. Okay, so ETN for me right now, I'm not touching. Honestly, I think it's a little bit of passing of the guard with Tank Bigsby. It's giving me shades of what it felt like with, what's his name? I'm sorry, Zeke, when Zeke was running on gas. Next, Dubs. I do like Dubs. I think he's someone that the Packers will feed. Shakir, I was shocked. I thought whenever Cooper was going there that it was really going to hurt Shakir, but he's shown that. McMillan, you saw last week, I told everyone I would be fading Tampa Bay, and I think until you definitely see how it's working out, it's odd. And then I think it's just whoever's kind of open, so I'm not starting any of them, just being honest. So from this, I'm going Shakir, Dubs, and yeah, I have concerns about ETN. All right, Kansas City Chiefs. Back to it. I talked about this. Kareem Hunt definitely up. He's a easy start until Pacheco comes back. But I think it's one of those where the Chiefs, as a NFL team, look good. The things they've done, adding DeAndre Hopkins, bringing in Juju. It's one of those where it's the sum of their parts is better. I'm not starting Hopkins, so I see something. I know they're going to feed Kelce. That's just me. I'm not trying to tell you that Hopkins might pop off. I think it's one of those, again, it's one of those, the sums of all their pieces. And for me, Patrick Mahomes is a sit. He has not been fantasy viable most of the season. And here's the truth. You go back and look at last season, he's had quite a few games. It's one of those where he has become fantastic at winning in the NFL, but it's not translating to fantasy football. The Las Vegas Raiders, man. It's shocking to see there's people viable. I have to say this. Brock Bowers, I was wrong about to begin the season, and he is definitely viable, showing that, especially if you're in Dynasty, he is the top tight end. Jacoby Myers and Tucker kind of get fed, but this is someone they're sleeping on. Alexander Madsen. He's clearly become the number one, someone that I think a lot of us thought was going to be Zamir White, and it hurt us if we drafted him, especially if we were going anchor or late round running back. So Madsen's out there, and you should add him, especially depending upon the matchups. He's someone that I would have as my RB3 in some weeks, flexes, looking at that. Dobbins, I like it as soon as he emerged as a guy because he always had some talent. He's only 25, and Harbaugh's shown he loves having a workhorse. Justin Herbert, 2 weeks ago, over 350 yards passing. Last week, almost 300 yards, got some touchdowns. The arrow is up on Herbert, and please remember, 2 years ago, this guy was going in the top 5, okay? So he has the talent, and now he has a coach. He just has to get that connection. Lad McConkey, arrow's definitely up. Josh Palmer, I think if you're looking just to add anyone else, he's kind of that bench guy you wait to see, but it's definitely Lad and then Josh. So those are the three that I like. On to the Rams. We were all shocked when Puka Nacua came back, but he looked fantastic. He's clearly the number one. If you're looking, it was him and then Cooper Kupp, but way that Sean McVay has it, you can start both of them. Kyron Williams, he's small in stature, but a clear number one. And Matthew Stafford, with all of his weapons back, is a start. Now, we have Demarcus Robinson. If you added him and you're like, oh man, what happens? Clearly, he is not a number one. That's why he's bounced around the league. But the last 2 years, when he's had just Nakua or Cup, he has been very viable. So if you're in a league that starts a lot of players, or your 14 league, or something even deeper, Demarcus Robinson is an option. All right, Miami Dolphins, Jalen Waddle. I don't know what to say. I mean, we like that Tua's back and the talent is there, so hopefully Tua shakes off a little more rust. Tyreek Hill obviously is Tyreek Hill, and Devin A. Chain finally was paying back the people that drafted him late in the first round, top of the second. Mostert, I'm scared because he's very TD dependent, and that's what I'm really going to talk about with the Dolphins. On to Minnesota Vikings. I mean, Justin Jefferson. Do we even need to say anything about Justin Jefferson? Aaron Jones, when he's not dinged up, I gotta say, I am sad the Packers let him go. He just knows how to run the football. Jordan Addison, a little bit Jekyll and Hyde, especially with the guy right below Naylor. And Sam Donald has proven, I mean, he's a fancy option, which is kind of shocking. But again, the 49ers, you go and get right, which further shows how crappy the Cowboys are. Just quick and talking a little bit. 49ers got rid of, blanking, the guy that they traded all their draft picks for to the Cowboys for a fourth round pick. They got rid of him. Sam Darnold goes to the guru up there in San Francisco, gets right, and he's showing that's all he needed is a little tutelage and coaching. On to New England Patriots, okay? Ramondre has shown he can carry the load. Drake May, it sucks he had a concussion, but he's shown he's pretty good. Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift. I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift, depending upon the matchup. But if it's even, I'm going with Swift. Aaron Jones just doesn't always get the volume because of the fact that you do have Justin Jefferson, and that's one of those things that hurts him. But it's Swift, Jones. But again, I would look at the matchups depending week to week. Thank you for the question. Ramondre, someone, again, you can definitely start as a flex. Hunter Henry is proven to be one of the top passing catching options. And here's an interesting thing about Keyshawn Butte. He was a top high school wide receiver recruit coming out of LSU. Just kind of didn't find his way. The Patriots took a chance on him, and he's starting to really mesh a little bit with Drake May, probably because they're on the practice squad. Well, not practice, but the second string together. So Drake May, when he comes back, definitely like the talent. And if you're in Dynasty, this might be a time to trade for him, especially if you need quarterback help going forward. New England Saints. Olave came back and he did well. I mean, he clearly gets the ball fed. I've said over and over again, I'm never starting Taysom Hill because you never know, and I never want someone that can give me a 0 in a spot. I'd rather have Ertz or someone that gives me 4 or 5, but that's just me. Kamara, actually, I'd put him in stock down a little bit just because he bursts out the gates, but if you look, he's been going down and down. His average has been going down on his yards per carry. He did just have a good game, but he is getting older and he's slowed down the last few years. He has these boom games, and overall, he looks great. He'll finish as like the running back 8. But when you look at some of the games, it does look like sometimes he gets a little tired. New York Giants, Tracy showed he is a guy, sexy guy, concussion at the end. Malik Neighbors, you start him. I think you can start Wandell and Slayton if it's really deep, and Daniel Jones for me is only start and super flex if you have to. New York Jets, Garrett Wilson is showing that he's making the most of it. I know everyone thought it'd be Devontae Adams, but Adams has gone 12 and 9 targets, so targets are there, so that's something that has hurt other people. Breece Hall, I would have the arrow down just for the fact that you spent a top 5 pick and he just has not returned the value on it. But again, you have to start him every week, but it's just sucking that the Jets are a huge dumpster fire. On to the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts, fantastic. Skinny Batman, fantastic. Barkley, A.J. Brown. Goddard is out, but I would only be touching these 3. I would not be going to backup tight end. Goddard has shown that he does pretty well with Jalen Hurts. So when he comes back, he gives you that low end, tight end 1, tight end 2. On to the Steelers. Pickens with Russ is legit. So that helps. It seems like Pickens is catching the ball a little bit better. The volume's still there. Najee has finally started to emerge again. He's kind of like that little engine that could. He starts slowing just at the end of the season. He's always over 1,000 yards. I think a part of it's just the cold weather, and he's that battery ram. Van Jefferson, I wouldn't trust any of the secondary. I'd actually have Pat Freiermuth, trusting him more. So these are up. Russell Wilson and steady with Freiermuth, just to be honest. That's the way I would have them. San Francisco 49ers. We talked about this. If you did not know, they're on a bye this week. Next week, it is looking like Christian McCaffrey is coming back. So Isaac Guerrero, I would not blow too much fab or the top waiver wire. Kittle's been fantastic. Brock Purdy has definitely been fancy viable. Debo is the main guy now, especially with Ayuk out, and Ricky Pearsall and Jennings. But remember, Jennings should be back too, so that will slide Pearsall down. And remember, he didn't have training camp. On to Seattle. You have DK, who should be the top option. He's been banged up, but when he plays, he's number one. Jackson Smith and Tyler Lockett are two up and down for me. This is a snapshot after 1 week, but I am only starting them in my flex or if someone's injured. Charbonnet, they have the arrow steady, but again, he's only just a flex option. I know Walker had a bad game. It really hurt me too, but Walker is the guy there. And Geno Smith, for the most part, you can start him. Jones, yeah, if you're answering the question, Kelly, about Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, it is super, super close. I leaned a little bit towards Swift just because it seems like their offense does stick to the run a little bit more. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Kate Otten, if he's out there, you need to be starting him because he is the number one passing option. And with Evans probably going to have a hand streak for a few more weeks, it is Otten. Yeah, exactly. Jones, you can't really go wrong. I always like to look at the matchups when it's that kind of tier of running back. Jalen McMillan and Palmer, those guys, I'm putting them on my bench just to see. Rashad White, Bucky Irving, I like Bucky. I think Bucky's the guy. Sean Tucker's the one that seems to be the little bit of a last man out. But Bucky Irving is the first guy that I'm starting out of that backfield. Titans. Definitely the arrow is up with Rudolph being the quarterback. He showed last year he can pass the ball. So with Mason, I like Pollard more. I really like Calvin Ridley. If he is out there, definitely look for that. It's one of those where they finally have a quarterback that can kind of pass the ball. So there's some fancy relevance. I would also kind of look at the matchups, but these are two guys that the arrow should be way up on, especially because they're out there on waiver wires. And finally, the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels, I don't think he needs to say anymore. He's been fantastic. Terry McLaurin, same thing. A slow first 2 weeks, but he's definitely someone that you can start, and you can start him as your wide receiver number one. And Zach Ertz has such a safe floor. He's been giving you at least 5 points, and it's been higher the last few weeks. Austin Eckler, I'm probably just waiting to see who the matchup is. Brian Robinson doesn't get the love he should. He is their workhorse, their number one. As long as he is healthy, I start him against most people. A lot of it is Jaden Daniels. That threat to rush really opens it up for Brian Robinson, especially if he does the read pass option. So Brian Robinson is someone I really like. All right, guys, if you did not know, please check us out. We are the Degenerate Gambling Life. You can check out our YouTube videos. We drop them on Tuesdays. We do waiver wire and a bunch of other poker videos. We do debates. We just debate the Browns, whether or not they should be tanking. Saturdays, we do start and sits. And Sundays, an hour before, we just go over any questions and things that you guys want to talk about. All right. Have a great week, guys.